Welcome to Nates ArtLab. Thank you for joining us. My name is Tammy DeCaro, and this is a tutorial on mixing paint and feeling all those fall vibes. This is the picture that Nate challenged us with, and we had to mix our own colors. So I started the blue with Blick metallic teal. I added primary cyan, and then I realized it wasn't giving me the depth that I wanted, so I went in with some Payne's Gray from Golden Fluids, and there you see I'm testing the Payne's Gray to make sure that it's not too purple. Then I added Windsor Blue, and the interesting thing about this process is I had a difficult time with this color palette just getting into it because I'm primarily a coastal artist. So I had no trouble mixing blue, but when it got to the oranges and that green, I really had some challenges. But I decided to make them all metallic colors, so of course that made it even harder to do that. So here is the green. I started with phthalo green, added some cadmium yellow, and 24 karat gold to make it metallic. I ended up making 3 shades of green, a deep green, a mid-tone green, and that lighter kind of army green, I guess you'd call it. And I find it easier to mix my darker colors first and then go in with either titanium white or titanium buff light to lighten them up. I made this one a metallic by adding 24 karat gold and a little bit of the Amsterdam silver, which really is kind of like a muted champagne. One of the things that's interesting about mixing these colors is the oranges were very rustic, like pumpkin spice colors, and that's not an easy color range to work in for me, as it's not something I typically work with from a painting perspective. Because of the area, being here in Southwest Florida, people tend to go for the coastal blues and greens. So I'm looking at the reds and oranges, and certainly could have gone for my orange range with starting off with a red, but typically I find it's easier to mix oranges with cadmium yellow and magenta. At least that's how I was taught in painting class, and so that's kind of my go-to. Because I am mixing fluid paints, of course the quantity of the mixed colors is a lot more than what you would see with a typical brush acrylic application. So I start out with a medium body Creative Inspirations cadmium yellow, and then add primary magenta to that and continue to work that magenta until I get the first shade of orange that I was looking for, and that's the lighter of the 2 shades of orange. And I also made these metallic by adding in off camera, because I did this later, some of the TLP burnt sienna, I think is what it's called. I dispersed that with alcohol first and then added it to the paint. So there's my first shade of orange. Now I'm adding more magenta to kind of deepen that color just a little bit. And you'll notice that I scoop this paint up off of that acrylic palette into small paper cups, and then I add my pouring medium and Floetrol. So this is the first shade of orange, and then I start adding more magenta to get that deeper shade. One of the things I find challenging with mixing colors is, I try to stay away from using titanium white because I find that it just mutes most colors, and it's such a strongly pigmented paint. It's one of the highest pigments of paint in most brands, will be your titanium white. So I typically will use a mixing white, which most brands have, or the Titan Buff Light, because I find that it gives it just a little bit of lightening effect without going overboard. And when you're mixing colors, particularly for fluid art, most people don't start out with enough paint to really create, a good amount of fluid paint to work with. So that's something I have discovered working off of this white acrylic palette. It's easy to mix on and scoop off the paint, and then also it's easy to see the transparency of your paint because it's against that white background versus using a clear palette or a piece of glass. On this particular painting, I also added a few other shades of colors. Like I added two other darker greens, and ended up really making these oranges very metallic by adding that TLP pigment after the fact. So here is the crimson, and I started out with Creative Inspirations Crimson, but as you can see, when I spread it over that white palette, it is somewhat transparent. I think it's a semi-transparent paint. So I also need to deepen this color to get to that deeper red. I added black, and then of course I had to make it a metallic. So I tested two different metallic options. I added copper, which has a tremendous amount of warmth and depth to it as well. And then I separated out some of that non-metallic paint on the right side of my palette, and I add 20. So I'm just adding a little bit more black to deepen that red a little bit more, to give it a brick red tone, or more like a Bordeaux red if you use the Arteza Bordeaux red. The copper definitely helped to make that metallic color, and in the end I ended up mixing these two together because I didn't need 3 different shades of red. But it was a gorgeous red metallic. Here I take the non-metallic side of the palette and add 24 karat gold. I find that when I'm mixing for metallics, I use the 24 karat gold quite a bit to turn a color that I'm working with into a metallic. I also use silver a lot. So these are warm shades, and silver wouldn't be the best choice to work with them on a metallic color. But when I do cooler tones, I use silver or pearl white to make my colors metallic. So I'm using this spouted measuring cup. I don't even remember where I got this, but incidentally, that white that I'm putting in there is a pearl white by Creative Inspirations, and it has just enough of a off-white tone that it works really, really well with this warm color palette. And I'm doing a ring pour on top of this because I was really, really trying not to overmix these colors, which had a great potential to become brown if they were overmixed together. So unfortunately, because of the spinning, I did lose a lot of that deep blue on the outside, and you know, I'm pleased overall with the finished piece, but I really wish I had been able to keep more of that very deep teal metallic, or it wasn't even really teal, I guess, a mid-blue metallic in this painting, because I really liked the shift there of the two sides, one being very all the reds and oranges on the one side and then greens and blues on the other. But of course, gravity definitely had a factor in this, and I used my spinner, but my spinner wasn't level, which I didn't realize until after the fact, and it definitely went off of one side more than the other because of the way I poured it. And I did like that spouted measuring cup though. It allowed me to get the paint much closer to the canvas than using a typical standard cup to do a ring pour. And also, I don't know if you noticed this, but I held it underneath so that I could have better control versus holding it with the handle. So I spin this out and end up losing quite a bit of that blue, but it did end up being a very interesting ring pour because of the size. This is a 20 or an 18 by 18 canvas, which had been previously painted with pearl white. I don't even remember now why I painted it with pearl white, but you know, it was in the pile of canvases to reuse, so it was perfect for this. So a couple of things I did, unfortunately, delete my YouTube channel by accident. Don't even ask how that happened, but now I'm climbing back up to where my previous 600 subscribers were, so I would appreciate a like and follow and a comment. Also, on 9/25, the holiday glass and resin kits will go on sale, limited quantity. And if you want to find out more about that, go to createmonthlyclub.com and get on the mailing list so you have the notification of when those kits are available. Thank you for joining our Nates ArtLab Collab today, and stick around to watch Amy McKeon next. Please leave a comment and let us know what you think about these videos and this beautiful fall palette. It was a fun challenge, and we look forward to seeing you next month.